Thank you for tuning in to the Stories That Bind Us. We host open and honest conversations about personal experiences which can include sensitive topics such as identity, emotional struggles, mental health, and life challenges. Some of these discussions may be sensitive or difficult for certain viewers. This content is intended to encourage reflection, growth, and meaningful dialogue. So instead of cutting or censoring our episodes, we present them in their entirety. Thank you for being here and engaging with these important conversations. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, welcome to the Stories That Bind Us. Thanks for coming, Gabby.
Thanks
for sitting
having
down. This is just an opportunity for us to have a conversation. What we have experienced lately in our culture, and I've seen it for kind of years just in my own life, that there's a lot of us that just get so busy and we're hanging out, we're working, we're doing what we have to do with our families and commitments, and then we really don't take the time to sit down and have a conversation. Just talk. We can shoot the breeze, we can go to sporting events or whatever activities we're doing, and we can engage and we can have conversation, but it's usually not that deep and meaningful. So this is an opportunity to do that.
Awesome.
It's kind of how I grew up, and that's kind of, I think, how things were in our society, but we're seeing a departure from that. So just really wanted to sit down and talk about your story, get to know you more, and talk about the things that you've learned and things that would be inspiring to others, encouraging lessons you've learned that you'd want to pass on and help others that are going through similar challenges. You good?
I'm great.
So let's jump in. Let's talk about your background and some of the things that you've gone through over the years. I know a little bit, but I don't know that much. So where would you like to start?
Leaving it up to me, awesome. I guess we can just do a little background. I was born in Chicago, and at the time that I was born, my parents were not together, so I've never met my dad. I think that's a very important part of my story. My mom was a single mom, so we ended up moving to Tucson and living with family until we got back on our feet, and my mom eventually got remarried to who I recognized as my father figure. I do have an older brother, Chance, you know him, and we grew up together for most of our lives in Tucson until things got hard, and we ended up losing everything. We lost our house. Before we lost our house, we lived in a home with no hot water, no appliances. I was sick as a kid. I got really bad migraines, and there was no reason behind why. And during all this time, when we were losing our house, we moved into our neighbor's house with our friends, and I was 10 at the time. And on my 11th birthday, me and my best friend that I was living with at the time decided to go ride four-wheelers. And my mom worked nights at the time, so she was sleeping, and we went with a friend, and we were out, and this moment changed the trajectory of my whole life because I got into an accident where I ended up in a coma for 2 weeks. I was severely injured. I was leaking spinal fluid. And in the moment that the accident happened, I swear that I could recall that I had a dream. Like, God told me, like, this accident was going to happen, but it needed to happen in order to, like, move along in my story, essentially. So when I got in the accident, I ended up in the Children's Hospital in Tucson. Terrible 11th birthday.
Yeah.
Very rough. But we ended up moving to Wyoming when all is said and done. And this is where I really started to notice like a lot of shifts in my life, because I was always outgoing and a dancer, and I loved to just express myself freely. And in Wyoming, this new place, this small town, which I'm not used to, and on top of then, because of my accident, being limited on physical activity, I felt myself going into a really dark space in my life. And it was really hard for me. And as a young girl, you don't know how to express what you're going through. It's very hard. And I knew my mom was struggling. She's a single mom. And the last thing I wanted to do as a kid was put what I was feeling on her. So I just held it all in. Yeah, so very crazy, and really life-changing experience. I think being in the coma, obviously, don't really remember it, wasn't bad. It was everything after that was so hard for me to deal with. And not having a father, my mom got divorced, and it was just us, and we had to figure life out and how to restart. And I didn't necessarily have the tools I needed to restart. So I did what I thought was best and just coasted by. And as time went on, as you know, coasting by usually doesn't end well. Time goes by, I'm going through school, I start getting distracted, getting in the wrong crowd, hanging out with the wrong people. And one thing led to another. It's now my senior year, and I don't know if I'm going to graduate high school. I struggled, and it wasn't that I struggled academically. I just thought I didn't see the importance of an education. I didn't understand, with everything else I had going on, why it was so important for me in my future, because my mom was so good at protecting me from the real world and what it was like, that I didn't understand, like, I needed to really hone down and focus on my school. And when I got called into the principal's office to be told that, hey, you're probably not going to graduate, it was a reality check for me. I was like, whoa, what do I have to do to graduate? And on top of just that, being a young woman, going through all these crazy life changes and so many experiences, it was really hard for me. And I struggled, and I fell into a very deep depression that I was scared to tell anyone about. And because I was depressed, I alienated myself, and I didn't know where to go. And it got so bad that I ran away. And the craziest thing about me running away is I didn't know where to go, so I ran away to the church. I thought, the church can help me. They can tell me what to do. At the time, I didn't realize churches aren't open 24/7, so nobody was there. My only option was to go back home, get my life together, and graduate high school. And I finally did. I graduated on time. I graduated with less credits than everyone else, but still enough credits to get my diploma. And that's really all that mattered to me at the time. And I thought, I finally did it. I can move on. I can get out of this small town. I can fix my mental health and, better my future. I wanted to be a counselor. I wanted to help people who struggled and went through similar things as I did. And during my high school graduation after, I was sexually assaulted. So it really put a dampener on my growth, because I didn't know what to do. I knew it was wrong, and I felt so much pain and hurt, but I was too scared to speak up. And so thankfully I had a great support system of friends. They went to my mom. She went, and reported it to authorities, and I thought that would help me, and in fact it only hindered me. I went through this horribly long process, and all to be told that there was nothing they could do. It got dismissed. He was found not guilty, and that really messed with me mentally, but I had to keep going. What do you do? I'm an adult now. I'm 18. I have to keep going. There's no one to save me. So I just buried it down. And I moved to Arizona. I attempted college, wasn't for me. Moved back to Wyoming, moved back to Arizona. And then that is when I was like, I need to find a career. So I went to hair school, and I made it through, did hair, but was never really fully happy and was still making a lot of bad decisions. I ended up falling really heavily into drinking and hanging out with the wrong people. And that went on for a couple years before I ended up pregnant by someone that I didn't really know well, who was significantly older than me. And that was hard for me, because I knew that in my mind, the right thing to do was to stick it out and be together and create that family. But I was so lost and so hurt. And I let all this trauma of my past follow me that when I was pregnant, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, what am I going to do? Now I'm bringing another human into the world. And that's scary because I don't want my daughter to experience the things I've experienced. So, of course, I was sober during my pregnancy, made it through, had my beautiful daughter, and thought, this is it. This is where, you know, my life gets better and I can be who she needs me to be. I did anything and everything to make sure that things would be okay. But the reality is when you're not following God's path, you're going to continue to have storms in your life. And I realized that the hard way. The storms kept coming and coming and coming until finally I was left with nothing except me and my daughter. And a very special person, you, gave me a place to stay, which really changed everything in that moment for me. Like, that is what I needed. I needed someone to see me and help me out of this hole that I created for myself. And from that moment forward, I realized I really just needed to put all my faith into God and work on that relationship first, because no other relationship is going to matter unless my relationship with God matters first. And of course, there's been things from that moment and this moment, but I really do feel like it took me a long time to get there, and I always had a relationship with God, but I never just handed my life to Him and let Him take control. And now I'm finally realizing, as a young woman, that is so important, and the minute you do that, things come together.
You said a lot, and that's good. I appreciate that, because you've been on quite a journey that's had some really significant ups and downs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that you've overcome so much. So can we unpack some of what you just shared?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm curious. I have a few questions, but you had shared with me before about the accident on your birthday, mm-hmm. and how just awful that was for you to have to overcome. And I know that put your family through a lot of stress, and you just had a lot of things that changed, as you said. Mm-hmm. So what was it like going through that process of recovery? And I don't want to dig too deep in, but I'm just curious how long it took and what the extent was. Because there's a lot of people that go through significant health issues.
Yeah, definitely. And I know my story can help other people as well. It was hard. I mean, as a kid, you want to run and play around with your friends. And I was basically told that for a whole year, I would not be able to do that. So my recovery process was a year to make sure that I wasn't leaking spinal fluid or anything. And it was very difficult because as a kid, kids are kids, you're young, I was in 6th grade at the time. And how do you tell a 6th grader, don't run, don't play, like just sit? You don't. So there was times where I'd end up back in the hospital because I didn't listen, or I hit myself in the head, and now, who knows if spinal fluid is going to be leaking. So I really struggled. I struggled mentally too because people looked at me differently. I mean, I got put on a 504 plan, and that basically means like special help with school. People knew that. I was getting pulled out of classes, to take my test. It was embarrassing. I was this girl where my whole life, I had friends and a good social life, and all of a sudden people viewed me as like a weird kid. And I was like, I'm not weird. I'm just like everyone else. But it was hard. I had to learn how to and being in a new state, just reevaluate my life and who I was.
Yeah. That's a big thing to do at 11, 12 years old when you're young, recovering, mm-hmm. especially with just all the issues with recovering from a massive injury. Mm-hmm. And then life changed as well, being a young lady becoming a woman, a younger woman. But that's a lot to deal with at the same time. And then changing where you lived, your mother's marital situation, so family dynamics change. That's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. So you kind of progressed through. You shared that you got to a point where you weren't making great decisions. You started going down because you held so much of that stuff inside.
I did, and I think acting out gave me the attention that I was craving. Not the right attention, definitely the wrong attention. But when you're a kid, those connections don't link up in your head. You're just like, oh, I'm doing this and there's a reaction and people are paying attention to me. I'm going to keep doing these things because at least someone is like seeing and hearing and listening to me. And it came to a point where I ended up in the counselor's office for things I didn't even do, rumors that were spreading because of my own lack of self-confidence. I didn't know even really how to ask for help at the time. So it was hard. I didn't know that I had never done therapy, counseling, any of that. I didn't even know that was an option. Thankfully, I had my youth group, which was really, really what helped me get through that time. One, because, troubled kids, they need something. Everyone needs something. Even if you are making bad decisions, there's always a reason behind why. You're not a bad kid. You're not a bad person. You just need guidance. You need help. It's a human crying out for help. And they just need one person to really hear them and understand. And I found that in my youth group.
That's nice. You had a place to go where you could connect.
Yeah.
And get some help. Did they have any resources or anything, or was it just that connection that was helping?
It was that connection, and I did do a little bit of counseling through the pastor at the time, but I just vividly remember we went on like a youth group trip to, like the mega churches, and I lived in a small town at the time, so we went to Denver, and we did this huge conference, and that's really where I just connected with one of the youth group leads, and really just like found God in that. Well, that's the first time I really like recognized we have a God, and kind of changed my life. There was a lady named Samantha, and she saw, like, without me saying anything, like the pain I was feeling on the inside, and she like really just stood by my side through it all and like wrote me very inspiring notes and asked me questions that no one had ever asked me before about my life. And it was really like a beautiful experience to have that kind of support.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good job, Samantha. She did well. She stepped in a place that you needed her to. Yes. So that's cool. Yeah. Well, it's important that we have those connections, and I'm glad you shared that because that's huge. There's so many people, even though we have all these social media accounts and access to humans across the country and across the world, there's just not that level of connection that you just shared, where someone's looking at you, they're talking to you, they're writing you notes, and they're finding a way to connect and just be in that space with you. And that's why this is important for me. I can talk to people all day long and have lots of meetings and have so many things that we aspire to accomplish in work or career, jobs, families, whatever, sports, athletics, things of health or whatever we value. But if we exclude the connection part, at the end of the day, what really did we accomplish? You don't take any of those accolades to the grave. If you go and your time is up and you accomplished a list of things on whatever that list is you've created, and you don't have the relationship and the connections, what really is the meaning? You're not going to be carrying around these trophies in heaven or wherever you're at. So I think that's an integral part of your story that is intriguing to me. So you shared that you went with the youth group, you got connected in that helped you with some mental health and having those connections, and then some counseling with the pastor. Were you able to do more counseling? Because you still talked about depression and going into these dark places, especially towards the end of high school, and then even afterwards when you move back and forth again and you're in your late teens, early 20s, kind of getting back into those habits, maybe not making very good decisions. Were you able to get help and resources to overcome some of that?
So it took me a very long time to get therapy. And I think it doesn't matter what my excuses were. They were excuses at the end of the day. I am used to be a person who was scared to share my life out of fear of judgment, regardless if it was with a therapist or not. And I went through a lot of things as a kid, and I was told by someone in my life that how could I be depressed? My life is so good. And I think I held on to that thought for so long that I convinced myself, like, well, why would I go to therapy? They said my life's good. There's no way I'm depressed. It's in my head. And that really, really like messed with me. So it took me having a baby and really struggling and hitting an all-time low and having nothing to go and seek help again and have someone to talk to. But during those times where I didn't have it, I did obviously actively work on my mental health. I just did it alone for most of the part. And I do owe myself a lot of credit because I got therapy and I got help, but a lot of the work I did on my own. A therapist can guide you, they can give you advice, but really you just have to look inward and say, what can I do for myself that's going to help better my life? Because we have free will, we're humans. And especially in today, the day and age I grew up when social media was blowing up. Like you said, social media is changing our culture completely. And so that was hard because I always looked at people's lives on social media and I thought, wow, this is crazy. Why isn't my life like that? But then I stopped using social media to look at other people's lives, and I started using social media as a resource. So if you go to my social media, you're not going to find anything. It's blank. Why? Because I don't believe in social media. But I do think that there's accounts out there that if you can't afford the resource for mental health help, there's accounts based on mental health. I used those a lot throughout my journey, just reading about, other people's stories, how they worked through them. So on one side, while social media is dangerous and can be used in the wrong way, there's also a lot of resources on social media that can be used in a positive way. It's all kind of how you curate your feed. And I think a lot of my journey and fixing my mental health has been based on, finding, if I'm going to scroll on social media, scrolling at things that are helping develop my brain and like my capacity to hold emotional intelligence and self-love and things of those nature.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you can have many tools and it's not the tool that can be positive or negative, it's how you use it.
Exactly.
Especially if you have a hammer, you can go smash something or you can build something. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes with a phone or social media, access to the internet. There's so many tools that we have at our fingertips and available to us like no other time in history. And it's just knowing in moderation how to use it. And that's the interesting challenge, especially your generation and the generations now of younger folks that don't know what life is like without it, without all these technology and tools that we have available. So I'm glad you touched on that, because that's huge. You can find a lot of help and resources if you look and then don't get distracted.
Exactly. And I wanted to be part of that movement, I believe hugely in connection, and I feel like connection is lost. And now with AI and things of those nature, I worry for, my daughter and her generation. What is connection going to look like to them? So I think a big part of it also has to do with saying, hey, how can I help change? And for me, that was, why don't I stop posting all the good moments on my social media? Because it's not true. It's not who I am. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of my life, but there's so much more to me, and I don't want anyone to look at my social media and think, wow, I want her life, because chances are they probably don't. They don't want to go through the things I've went through. I want them to look at my social media and not see anything, and then maybe reach out, build a connection, find time to sit down, go to have coffee, meet in person, have these kind of conversations where we can really, I share my story, someone shares their story, and we can kind of build and just create that connection that I fear the world is going to lack.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, well, you say a lot when you talk, so I appreciate the depth of how you share. And it's cool that you've learned so much, especially in the years you've been here. You're not in your 50s and gone through 40 years of 30 years of challenges and overcoming. You've learned a lot in your young age, which again is not a negative, and I don't hope you don't take it that way. I'm admiring how much you've accomplished and grown just from what you've experienced at a young age with the accident to learning the challenges of having to get through school, and then not having those connections until you found certain people along the way that were investing in you. And there's this fallacy out there that people think, I have all these likes and friends and I have all these views and followers and whatever, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't make you feel any better about yourself. It's very shallow and it only lasts for a time. And you can post all the, like you said, the wonderful things about your life or the things you're going through. And those are nice when you have a distance between you. Like I like seeing posts to know, just to catch up. Kind of like when you send somebody a letter, they respond back. That used to be back in the day, or you pick up the phone, you're not there and you can't experience what they're going through, but you can check in. And so to me, social media is an opportunity to check in. It's just to see what's going on in their life. And it's not going to replace the meaningful interactions when we're together. A phone call is still better than looking at a post, but I can see a picture. So I appreciate social media from that perspective. But one of the things that you shared that I was trying to circle back to was, even though we have all these ways to connect, the opportunity to be together and what you were needing from different folks in your life growing up and even still are those meaningful connections. Somebody that sees you, appreciates you, values you, wants you in their life and wants to be in yours and wants to know what's going on, and then experience things together, whatever that looks like. And that's the reason why I'm doing this. And that's what I really want to make sure that I spend my time doing, because we can be busy doing things with people, but not really having those meaningful relationships. And it's becoming less evident the more we just watch, like you said, things unfold with social media, AI, just everybody's life is so busy. And we don't necessarily have enough time to just sit and do this. And then when things really get hard, you find out who's closest to you and who's willing to go through the hard. Because the hard stuff is what draws us together, and it's where we need each other. So what would you say if someone's going through a dark valley right now? It doesn't matter what age. They can be that elementary student, middle school, high school, somebody just having a child or not being able to have a child, someone going through a health crisis, someone going through whatever challenges in life where they find themselves in a place where they feel alone. They feel like they're going through it. Even if they're surrounded by people, they're alone. Nobody knows what's going on inside. And maybe they've bought the lie that you did, that your life is good. I'm supposed to be grateful, I'm supposed to be thankful, or people see you a certain way. And so you buy that lie and say, well, it must just be me. But why? It doesn't make sense, because I feel conflicted. Inside, this tells me one thing. Outside, they're telling me another. What advice would you give somebody that's going through kind of that space? How do you take a step towards getting out of it?
I think for me, and hopefully a lot of people don't have to hit their all-time low, but when you are alone and isolated, just give yourself grace. Take a moment to step back and think. Like, the one thought I remember, my first thought was, like, people are always like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? It's like, it's okay. Just sit with it for a second. Accept that, hey, maybe things aren't good right now, but that's okay. Everyone goes through struggles. Everyone goes through battles. I really do believe in working from the inside out. So just like, whether it takes a day, a month, a year, build a plan for yourself Start with working from the inside. What am I putting into my body? What am I speaking out into the world? What energy do I want to speak out into the world? What energy do I want to put into my body? Just slowly find little things that bring you joy. Focus on breathing. Breathing and actually breathing how humans are supposed to breathe is huge in mental health. We are such a fast-paced world now. It's go, go, go. We don't even realize, like sitting right here, right now, we're not putting oxygen into our body to fuel it the correct way we should be. And I think just taking that time when you're down and alone, sad, having a bad day, sit there, breathe, meditate, whatever you want to call it, and just ask yourself while you're taking those deep breaths, like talk to God, honestly. If you're religious or not, talk to someone while you're breathing. Ask yourself simple questions. Start off with, where am I? The first thought that comes to your brain, do that. Focus on one thought at a time, because I noticed in my journey, and I know a lot of other people, part of like falling behind and getting yourself in a rut is you have so many thoughts racing through your head. You can't focus on what matters most. So I just urge people to really focus, break things down. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get out of your rut. I mean, it could take years. I've had years of trauma, and I'm just now seeing these positive things happen to me and come to me because I finally slowed down, focused on my health, on the inside, my breathing, praying, and just really not looking for outside validation, but validating myself from within and having other people validate themselves from within. When you do that and when you work on yourself, I think life, the universe, God brings those people to you that you need. Like the minute I said, you know what, I'm going to stop forcing connection. I'm going to stop forcing myself to find the answers. I'm just going to focus on what I know to be true and focus on what I know I can work on little by little. Whether it's like, there were days where I didn't want to get out of bed, you know, little things. And it's like, well, what if I just get out of bed and take a shower? Even if I do nothing else for the rest of the day, I did that. And that's just one step towards being in a healthier mindset. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And depending on what you've gone through, it could take years to heal and really just accept yourself. But I just urge people to really focus on the health and wellness aspect of themselves. And if they can get therapy and resources, use that as, of course, a great tool. But know that that tool is just that. It's a tool. You still have to do the work. But it's always going to be okay. It's life. We're going to go through our storms. And sometimes those storms are just leading us to a better purpose. It's so crazy because, you know, my car, this is just random side note. When my car broke down this weekend, I was like, why is this happening to me? Like all the chaos and everything in my life and, you know, starting a new job and like I was unemployed for a couple months and all these things. I was like, why is this happening? And then yesterday I was watching this video, and when I send you my proposal, it's gonna be in there a little bit. But it was saying, this guy was just talking about like the storms and weathering issues and everything. And he's like, you should look up Proverbs 6. So I looked it up yesterday, and I spent like 5 hours just going in depth about Proverbs 6 in the whole chapter and just reading it and breaking it down. And I was like, wow, this is the theme of my whole life. Because, you know, in there it talks about the 7 things that God hates. And in that moment, it was like a pivotal moment for me yesterday of everything I'm doing is aligning with what God wants, and every choice I'm making is like slowly getting me there. And reading that, it was like God wanted me to receive that message in that moment. It's helping me with my proposal. It was just like really crazy, really like beautiful experience yesterday. I was just like, wow, like I asked God for direction and he answered within like 24 hours. the craziest experience I've ever had, the fastest I've ever seen God work in my life. So then coming here today, I'm like, with that, everything I learned yesterday and diving into that chapter, I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this was meant to happen. It's so, and you already know I feel that way about being with Grad Solutions and everything. Like, it was meant to happen, but everything in my life is just confirming that right now. And I'm like, wow, my journey is not over, and I feel myself gaining wisdom every day.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's fun when you're looking for a direction or guidance and then you see the answer come.
Right away.
And then you go, geez, that's why that storm was happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that came up.
Yeah.
And I had an experience like that last night too, where something just kind of went sideways, and I was like, all right, there's a reason why this is happening again.
Yeah.
And it's, usually a predecessor to something good happening that it just tries to distract you.
Something good, or maybe you're, in my situation, maybe I'm focusing my energy in the wrong places, and God's putting these obstacles saying, hey, redirect.
Right.
Because you're never going to get to where you want to go unless you're following the path of God.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll be excited to see the proposal, but this is fun. It's a fun journey.
Yeah.
Challenging at times, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But
So
worth it.
I had kind of a follow-up that I wanted to ask you about, and it's more of a statement, but also curious if you kind of align or where your thoughts are with what I'm going to tell you. But when you were talking about like the connections you had and we were talking about that, where we touched on Samantha and we touched on the pastor stepping in, and you've had friends and gotten to the wrong crowd at times. So they've influenced you,
Mm-hmm.
or people saying things that weren't helpful, giving you bad advice, or saying things that were kind of trite, or minimalizing what you're going through. And I don't think those are helpful. I think those are, the wrong tools that we would rely on to kind of help us when we're going through struggles. And we're talking a lot about connection, investing in people, having people invest in us. And some of that you missed when you were a kid. And your mom worked nights, and she's a single mom going through different challenges, different seasons, moving, trying to be close to family, trying to start over, all the things. But what kind of resonated and stood out to me, which I've experienced and keep experiencing, watching what happens with other people, is we just continue to pass on generationally what we've been given a lot of times. So those that have been abused or neglected, abuse or neglect a lot of times. And it's not 100%. It's not like, okay, you're going to have to wear this. This is now your scarlet letter or what have you. But we see it happen all the time. And we just, we have parents that are workaholics, and then we go, man, that sucked having a parent that was a workaholic. But a lot of times we fall into the same paths that they went down. Or we watched our parents make bad decisions. And then we go, geez, I'm doing the same thing. If we even recognize it and look at our own lives. So how do you then, as you have a 2-year-old and you're going to have different challenges continue to happen and come up, and your own likes, dislikes, issues that you have with things that come up in your life that you have to navigate, how do you not fall into some of those same traps of working a lot, not being investing in your family or your friends, your positive people group? How do you not fall into those traps where you're not giving them what they need to be successful going forward?
It's a great question. I find myself still to this day sometimes falling into those old traps. Like, I'm not perfect, I'm human, but I think it's a conscious effort of just telling yourself every day, the cycle ends with me. What can I do differently? What can I do to be who my family and my child needs me to be, who the world needs me to be? And I really ask myself that all the time. Like, what can I do to make a difference? Because you're not going to make a difference overnight. It's not going to change overnight. It's a conscious effort that you choose to make every single day. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall into old patterns. if that's all you've ever seen, it's hard not to. You just have to know that you're still trying and you're still getting up and you're choosing to make a positive impact and make a difference, even if it's not everything. Those little things are going to make a difference. And I don't think any person in this world out there can say that they haven't gone through trauma. So regardless, my daughter is going to go through trauma, you know? My daughter's gone through trauma. My daughter's experienced having cancer. She's had to go between homes. She has had to watch me not be the best mom. But I, for her, know I'm trying, and I know that when she's older, I'm going to make sure she has the resources and tools she needs to succeed, but also be real. Like, hey, you're going to have these storms you're going to weather, and that's okay. You are still loved and you're still of value.
Yeah, there's a sheltering when they're young, but you have to continue to build reality into their life.
Yep.
And you mentioned that before, where you can't shelter kids from the real world forever. There's a point where you have to start letting the real world in so that they know how to go through it.
Yep.
And how they can live, without thinking it's going to be Pollyanna or utopia. It's just not the way it works.
Yep.
So that's a good point, and I'm glad you're focusing on that. There's one last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up that resonated as well when you were talking about just having that ability to accept the good and the bad at the same time, not trying to avoid it and not stay in it, but sit in it for a minute and then process, kind of let things settle a bit and accept where you're at. It's okay to say, this is my reality, but I have a choice. And joy and pain can stay in the same space. It's how much do you want them to be in the same space? And if you're willing to take some steps to get out of that space and to improve your life, then you have that opportunity to do it. And I love that you were talking about making change and not expecting it to all happen overnight. Sometimes God answers prayers in an instant, and sometimes he answers that it's going to take time because he knows how we need to walk through things. And sometimes we're ready to go, and we most of the time think we are. But he says it's going to be a slower walk for you because you're just like a toddler at times. You think you can go run, but you're on wobbly legs. You can barely even stand. You can't even take the steps you need to take. So I like the fact that you shared that you had to sit in things, you had to process through them, and you had to accept that things weren't necessarily how you wanted them to be, but you had choices to make. And I would encourage anybody that's going through anything with mental health, especially any challenge, but really everything that we go through that's difficult stems from our thoughts about it. Because you can have a disability, you can have limitations, and they don't really become detrimental or negative until you assign that value to them. So it's how we view our lives and how we view the things. I'm not going to play pro football. I'm beyond that level at my age and where I'm at in my life. Some of those dreams have to die, but it doesn't mean that they couldn't be sweet for a moment. And it doesn't mean you can't lean back in that and go, oh, I remember when I wanted to do that. And not from a standpoint of, oh, that's terrible. It's more like that was the beauty of youth. You could dream those kind of dreams. But not everything is worth achieving or accomplishing. Sometimes we just have to accept that we've been dealt a hand and find the things that are good in it. If you lean into those things, you usually find the sweet parts of life when you accept that. It's not by accident.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think everything you said was beautifully put together and so true. It is okay to let go of a dream. I thought I was going to be a counselor. I thought I was going to help people in that way. And sometimes our dreams just shift. Like, I'm still going to help people, and I'm still a resource and a tool, just in a different way than I originally imagined. Your dreams as you develop with age, just like your mind, they change, and that's okay.
Yeah, still a lot of beauty in life.
There's so much beauty.
Just need to look for it.
Yep.
And then try to help other people experience it as well. Any closing thoughts or words?
Nope, just grateful, thankful, and truthfully glad that I'm on the other side of the hill that I've climbed, because it takes time and it's beautiful regardless.
Joy in the journey, they say. Well, I really sincerely appreciate the time you were willing to just have this conversation, hang out, and share a little bit more about you and your story and the wisdom you've gained over the years that you've been willing to pass on. And I know you'll continue to do that with your own family and those loved ones in your circles, but grateful for the time you spent with me and that we continue the conversation a little bit later on down the road.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time to speak and just be a opinion in the world for people to pick up on.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to The Stories That Bind Us, the show that honors the weight of being human and reminds us that we're not alone in carrying it. Today we are rejoined by dear friend of the show, Gabby. Cinematography was done by Michael Brown. Editing and narration was done by Jim Martin. The Stories That Bind Us was created and hosted by Jim Lee. We'll see you again next week, and until then, take care of yourself.